Help! Somebody help! The screams tore through the peaceful evening air, and my heart dropped into my stomach. I looked around frantically. People were pointing, shouting, pulling out phones, but nobody was moving toward the water. I didn't think. I just ran. My name is Tony Matthews, and I'm a photography student who came to the Riverside Park that Thursday evening to capture the golden hour. My camera bag was still slung over my shoulder when I reached the edge and saw him, a small boy, maybe 4 or 5 years old, thrashing in the current. His little arms flailed desperately as the river pulled him under, then spit him back up, then dragged him down again. The water was freezing when I hit it. The shock nearly knocked the air from my lungs, but I forced myself to swim. My jacket became a weight trying to drown me. My jeans felt like concrete, but I kept going. The current fought me with every stroke, and for one terrifying second, I thought I wouldn't make it. Then my fingers caught fabric. His shirt collar. I yanked him toward me with strength I didn't know I had. "I've got you," I yelled, though I wasn't sure he could hear me over his sobbing and the rush of water. His small hands clutched my shirt in a death grip as I wrapped one arm around his trembling body and used the other to fight my way back to shore. My muscles screamed. My lungs burned. The current kept trying to sweep us both downstream, but I refused to let go. When hands finally pulled us onto the grass, I collapsed. My entire body went numb as I coughed up river water, gasping for air that felt like fire in my chest. Someone threw a blanket over my shoulders. Voices swirled around me, distant and muffled, as if I were still underwater. "Jace! Jace!" The voice cut through everything else, raw with panic and relief. I forced my eyes open and saw a man sprinting toward us. He was tall with broad shoulders, wearing an expensive black overcoat that whipped behind him as he ran. His dark hair was perfectly styled despite the chaos, and his face held an expression of pure terror that only a parent could wear. He dropped to his knees beside the boy and scooped him into his arms, holding him so tightly I thought he might never let go. "Daddy!" The child sobbed against his father's chest, tiny fingers gripping the man's suit jacket. "You're safe, sweetheart. You're safe now." The man's voice cracked as he rocked his son, pressing kisses to the top of his wet curls. "I've got you. Daddy's got you." I remained on the ground, trying to regulate my breathing. My whole body shook from cold and adrenaline. Someone had called an ambulance. I could hear sirens in the distance. The crowd around us had grown larger, everyone talking at once, but their words blurred together into meaningless noise. Then suddenly, the man was standing in front of me. He must have handed his son to someone because his arms were empty now, and his full attention was fixed on me. He knelt down, bringing himself to my level, and I saw his eyes clearly for the first time, deep brown, intense, swimming with unshed tears. "You saved him." His voice was barely above a whisper, thick with emotion. "You saved my son." I opened my mouth to respond, maybe to say it was nothing, or that anyone would have done the same, but I never got the chance. He pulled me into an embrace so sudden and fierce that it knocked the breath from my lungs all over again. This wasn't a polite thank you hug. This was desperate, consuming. His arms wrapped around me like steel bands, one hand pressed between my shoulder blades, the other gripping my waist. I could feel him shaking, or maybe that was me. His face buried into the crook of my neck, and his breath came in short, shuddering gasps against my skin. "Thank you," he breathed into my ear, his voice breaking. "If you hadn't been here, if you hadn't jumped in, God, I almost lost him. I almost lost everything." I froze, completely overwhelmed. The expensive cologne mixing with river water, the warmth of his body contrasting sharply with my frozen clothes, the weight of his gratitude pressing down on me. It was all too much. The crowd around us had gone quiet, watching this intimate moment between strangers, but he didn't seem to care. He held me like I was something precious that might disappear if he loosened his grip. When he finally pulled back, his hands moved to my shoulders, gripping them firmly as he studied my face. His eyes roamed over my features as if memorizing every detail, my wet hair plastered to my forehead, my blue eyes wide with shock, the way my teeth chattered from the cold. "My name is Blake Morrison," he said, his voice stronger now but still laced with emotion. "I'm the CEO of Morrison Industries, and you just saved the most important person in my world." Blake Morrison. The name rang a bell somewhere in the back of my mind. I'd seen it in business magazines, heard it mentioned on financial news channels. Billionaire entrepreneur. One of the most powerful men in the city. And he was kneeling in the grass, looking at me like I'd just given him back his reason for living. "I'm Tony," I managed to stammer out, my voice hoarse. "Tony Matthews. Tony." He repeated my name slowly, reverently, like he was tasting each syllable. Then, without warning, he shrugged out of his designer coat, probably worth more than my entire semester's tuition, and draped it around my shoulders. The silk lining was still warm from his body heat. "You're going to the hospital. Right now. That's not a request. I don't need—" "Tony." The way he said my name stopped me mid-protest. It wasn't harsh, but it carried an undeniable authority. His hands were still on my shoulders, his gaze locked onto mine with an intensity that made it impossible to look away. "Please. You jumped into freezing water. You could have hypothermia. You could have water in your lungs. You risked your life for my son. The absolute least I can do is make sure you're okay." Paramedics were arriving now, rushing toward us with medical bags and a stretcher. Blake stood and helped me to my feet, keeping one hand on my elbow as if afraid I might collapse. My legs felt like jelly, and I wasn't entirely sure I wouldn't fall if he let go. "Please," he said again, softer this time. His thumb traced a small circle on my arm, a gesture that felt far too intimate for two people who just met. "Let me do this. I need to know you're all right." Something in his voice, the vulnerability beneath the command, the genuine concern in those dark eyes, made it impossible to refuse. I found myself nodding, too exhausted and overwhelmed to argue anymore. "Okay," I whispered. Blake's entire body seemed to relax at my agreement. He called over one of the paramedics, keeping himself positioned between me and everyone else, protective in a way that felt instinctive rather than calculated. As they helped me toward the ambulance, I glanced back at the river. My camera bag lay abandoned on the grass where I'd dropped it before jumping in. I'd come here to capture the sunset, to practice my craft, to enjoy a quiet evening alone. Instead, I'd saved a child's life. And somehow, looking at the way Blake Morrison kept his hand on my back as the paramedics checked my vitals, I had the strangest feeling that my life had just become far more complicated than I could have ever imagined. The ambulance ride felt surreal. Fluorescent lights flickered overhead as we bounced along city streets, and I couldn't quite wrap my mind around how drastically my evening had changed in the span of 20 minutes. Blake sat across from me, cradling Jace in his lap. The little boy had finally stopped crying, now wrapped in thermal blankets and clinging to his father like a lifeline. But Blake's eyes weren't on his son, they were on me. Every few seconds his gaze would flick over, checking, assessing, worrying. Then, without warning, he reached across the small space between us and took my hand. I startled at the contact, my eyes snapping to where his larger hand enveloped mine. His palm was warm, his grip firm but not uncomfortable. His thumb began tracing slow, deliberate patterns across my knuckles, a soothing gesture that felt oddly intimate for two strangers. "You're still trembling," he observed quietly, his voice barely audible over the ambulance siren. "The adrenaline," I explained, though truthfully, I wasn't sure if the shaking was from the cold water, the shock, or the way this powerful man was looking at me like I'd hung the moon. He didn't release my hand. If anything, his grip tightened slightly, as if anchoring me to the moment. "We'll get you warmed up soon." The paramedic monitoring my vitals glanced between us with barely concealed curiosity, but said nothing. I wanted to pull my hand away. This was too much, too fast, too confusing. But something about Blake's touch grounded me, made me feel less like I was floating outside my own body. At the hospital, chaos erupted. Blake must have called ahead because we were immediately ushered into a private wing. Nurses descended on Jace first, whisking him away for examination while a doctor led me to my own room. I tried to protest the private accommodations. My student insurance definitely wouldn't cover this, but the nurse just smiled. "Mr. Morrison has already handled everything," she assured me. "Don't worry about costs." Of course he had. The doctor's examination was thorough. Mild hypothermia, water in my lungs that needed monitoring, exhaustion, some bruising from fighting the current. Nothing life-threatening, but they wanted to keep me overnight for observation. I was hooked up to an IV, given warm blankets and told to rest. I'd been alone for maybe 15 minutes when Blake appeared in my doorway. He'd changed clothes. Someone must have brought him fresh things, because he now wore dark jeans and a simple gray sweater that somehow made him look more approachable than the expensive suit had. His hair was still damp, suggesting he'd showered, but his eyes held the same intensity, the same focus that made me feel like the only person in his universe. "How's Jace?" I asked immediately. "Stable? Sleeping." Blake moved into the room, pulling a chair close to my bed before sitting down. "The doctors say he'll be fine. No lasting damage. Thanks to you getting to him so quickly." "I'm glad." Silence stretched between us, but it wasn't uncomfortable. Blake studied me with that same cataloging gaze from earlier, as if trying to puzzle out who I was and why I'd done what I'd done. "Tell me about yourself," he said finally. "Do you have family here? Someone I should call?" I shook my head. "I'm alone. My parents are back in my hometown, 3 states away. I came here for school. Photography major at the community college. Friends, roommates, some classmates, but nobody close. I mostly keep to myself." I paused, then added without thinking, "No significant other if that's what you're asking." His expression shifted, something that might have been relief flickering across his features. "I wasn't asking, but that's good to know." My face heated. Why had I volunteered that information? Blake leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. The position brought him closer, close enough that I could see flecks of gold in his brown eyes. "Tony, I need to be honest with you about something. What you did today, most people wouldn't have done that. They would have filmed it or called for help and waited, or convinced themselves someone else would handle it. But you didn't hesitate. You put yourself in danger for a child you didn't know. He needed help." "Exactly." Blake's voice grew more intense. "Your instinct was to help, regardless of the cost to yourself. That tells me something fundamental about who you are as a person. And He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. "I want you in my life." My heart stuttered. "What?" "I want to get to know you, take you to dinner, coffee, whatever you're comfortable with. I want to spend time with you, learn what makes you laugh, understand how you see the world through that ma'am of yours." His hand found mine again, this time deliberately, wrapping around it with purpose. "You saved the most precious thing in my life. That alone would make you important to me. But there's something else, something I can't quite explain. I look at you and I feel drawn, connected." "Blake, we only just met." "I know." He didn't look away, didn't retreat. "I know this is fast. I know I probably sound insane, but I built a billion-dollar company on trusting my instincts. And that instinct I have is screaming that you're someone I need to know, someone I need to keep close." The raw honesty in his voice left me speechless. This wasn't practiced charm or smooth seduction. This was genuine vulnerability from a man who probably didn't show that side of himself often. "I have my own life," I said weakly. "Classes, work, responsibilities. I'm not asking you to give up anything." Blake's thumb resumed those maddening circles on my hand. "I'm asking for a chance. Just one chance to prove that this connection I feel isn't one-sided. If you decide you want nothing to do with me after that, I'll respect it. But please, Tony, don't just walk away without giving us a chance to figure out what this is." I should have said no. Every logical part of my brain was screaming that this was too much, too intense, too complicated. Blake Morrison lived in a different world. Private jets and penthouse apartments, and business empires. I was a struggling student who ate ramen for dinner more nights than not. But when I looked into his eyes, I saw something that terrified and thrilled me in equal measure. Real interest, real desire to know me. And underneath it all, something darker and more possessive, that probably should have sent me running. Instead, I heard myself whisper, "One chance." The relief that flooded Blake's face was staggering. His entire body relaxed, and he brought my hand up to his lips, pressing a soft kiss to my knuckles that sent electricity shooting up my arm. "Thank you," he breathed against my skin. "You won't regret this. I promise." As he lowered my hand but didn't release it, settling back in his chair as if prepared to spend the night right there beside my bed, I wondered if I'd just made the best or worst decision of my life. Probably both. Morning light filtered through the hospital blinds, and I woke to find Blake still in the chair beside my bed, his hand still holding mine. He'd fallen asleep at some point during the night, his head tilted at an uncomfortable angle, dark circles under his eyes. Even exhausted and disheveled, he was striking. I tried to slip my hand free without waking him, but his eyes opened immediately, alert despite having clearly gotten little sleep. "Good morning," I murmured, suddenly self-conscious about my appearance after a night in a hospital bed. "It is now." His voice was rough with sleep, and he smiled, a genuine unguarded expression that transformed his entire face. "How are you feeling?" "Better. Warmer." I gestured at our joined hands. "You stayed all night. Where else would I be?" He said it like it was the most obvious thing in the world, not at all strange that a billionaire CEO had spent the night in a hospital chair holding hands with someone he'd met yesterday. Before I could respond, the door opened and a doctor entered, looking surprised to find Blake there. After a thorough examination, I was cleared for discharge with instructions to rest and follow up if I experienced any breathing difficulties. Finally, Blake said, standing and stretching, "Let's get you somewhere comfortable. My apartment is fine. Tony." He turned to face me fully, and I recognized the expression from yesterday, the one that said arguing would be pointless. "Your apartment is a studio with questionable heating and a refrigerator full of instant meals. Don't try to deny it. I can see it in your eyes. You need proper rest and nutrition. Come to my place, just for a few hours. Jace has been asking about you non-stop since he woke up." The mention of Jace weakened my resolve. He wants to properly thank his hero. Blake's expression softened. "Please. A few hours. If you're uncomfortable, I'll have my driver take you home immediately." Against my better judgment, I agreed. Blake's car was exactly what I'd expected. Sleek, black, expensive enough to cost more than most people's houses. The leather seats were heated, which felt divine against my still cold bones. He hit sneaking glances at me during the drive, as if making sure I was really there. When we arrived at his building, a doorman greeted us by name. Well, Blake's name. I got a curious but professional nod. The private elevator ride up to the penthouse felt like ascending into another world. Then the doors opened and I stopped breathing. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcased a panoramic view of the city. Marble floors gleamed under recessed lighting. The furniture was modern and clearly designer, arranged in a space that could have housed 3 of my apartments comfortably. Original artwork hung on the walls, pieces I recognized from my art history classes, worth small fortunes. "This is where you live?" The words escaped before I could stop them. Blake watched my reaction with something like amusement. "It's home, though I'll admit it's excessive for just Jace and me." "Tony!" I barely had time to brace myself before a small body collided with my legs. Jace wrapped his arms around me in a fierce hug, his face pressed against my stomach. "You came. Daddy said you might come and you did." His gray eyes, so like Blake's, gazed up at me with pure adoration. "Are you all better?" I crouched to his level, unable to resist his enthusiasm. "I'm much better. How about you, buddy?" "I'm okay. The doctors said I was very brave." He puffed out his chest proudly before his expression turned serious. "Thank you for saving me from the water. You're my hero." My chest tightened. "You're very welcome. Can I show you my toys? I have dinosaurs and building blocks and—" He grabbed my hand, already tugging me toward what I assumed was his playroom. "Jace, let Tony breathe," Blake interjected gently. But he was smiling. "Why don't you go wash your hands first? We'll have lunch soon." Jace scampered off, and Blake gestured for me to follow him. "Come on, make yourself comfortable. The guest bathroom is down that hall if you want to freshen up. I'll find you something to wear. Those hospital scrubs can't be pleasant." 20 minutes later, I emerged wearing Blake's clothes, soft sweatpants and a t-shirt that smelled like his cologne. They were too big, the sweatpants hanging low on my hips, the shirt drowning me, but they were comfortable and warm. Blake's eyes darkened when he saw me, his gaze traveling slowly from my bare feet up to my damp hair. "Those look good on you." The intensity in his voice made me blush and look away. Lunch was surprisingly normal. Blake actually cooked, not ordering from some expensive restaurant, making pasta with homemade sauce while Jace chattered about preschool and his favorite cartoons. I sat at the kitchen island, watching this domestic side of him emerge. "You cook?" I couldn't hide my surprise. Jace is picky. Restaurant food wasn't cutting it, and I wanted him to have proper nutrition. He stirred the sauce with practiced ease. So I learned. Turns out I enjoy it. It's meditative, watching him move around the kitchen with quiet confidence, occasionally ruffling Jace's hair or answering his endless questions. I saw a different Blake Morrison than the business magazines portrayed. This one was soft around the edges, patient, devoted. Tell me about Jace's mother. I found myself asking before I could think better of it. Sorry, that's too personal. Her name is Jamie, Blake said, his tone carefully neutral. We divorced when Jace was 1. Our marriage was complicated from the start. I was building my company working 18-hour days, and she needed more attention than I could give. When Jace was born, everything shifted for me. My priorities changed. But Jamie struggled with motherhood. She wanted the freedom of her old life back. Eventually she filed for divorce and signed over full custody. She sees him occasionally, but she's not really involved in his day-to-day life. Pain flickered across his features, quickly masked. We manage fine, Jace and I. We're a team. You're a good father, I said softly. His eyes met mine, holding my gaze. I try. He deserves the best. And now, he moved closer, the stove forgotten for a moment. Now it feels like maybe our little team could expand. Blake, I know what you're gonna say. Too fast, too much. We barely know each other. He was close enough now that I could feel the heat radiating from him. But from the moment I saw you pull Jace from that water, something inside me shifted. You're not just the person who saved my son. You're someone I genuinely want to know. Someone I want to be around. Is that really so crazy? Yes, my logical brain screamed. But my heart whispered something different. Just tell me you feel it too, Blake continued, his voice dropping lower. Tell me I'm not imagining this connection. I looked into his eyes, saw the vulnerability, the hope, the possessive edge that probably should have frightened me, and realized I couldn't lie. I feel something, I admitted quietly. I don't know what it is yet. Blake smiled, and it was like the sun breaking through clouds. He reached up and brushed his fingers across my cheek in a gesture so tender it made my breath catch. That's all I needed to hear. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of unexpected domesticity that both thrilled and terrified me in equal measure. Blake had convinced me to spend weekends at the penthouse, and what started as casual visits had evolved into something more structured, more permanent. I found myself packing overnight bags on Fridays, my toothbrush claiming space in his bathroom, my photography equipment spreading across the guest room he'd designated as my workspace. We fell into routines without even discussing them. Saturday mornings meant the park with Jace, where I'd capture candid shots of the boy on swings while Blake watched with an expression I couldn't quite read. Sunday afternoons brought trips to the aquarium or children's museum, Blake's hand finding mine in darkened exhibit halls as if it belonged there. Evenings were spent with Jace between us on the couch, animated movies playing while the little boy eventually drifted to sleep against my shoulder. Blake paid attention to details I'd never expected. He asked about my camera settings, my compositional choices, genuinely interested in understanding my art. He'd started keeping my favorite coffee in the kitchen, remembering how I took it without me having to remind him. Small gestures that felt monumental in their consistency. One Sunday evening after we'd tucked Jace into bed, Blake led me to the terrace. The city sparkled below us, 1,000 lights creating their own constellation. He handed me a glass of wine, our fingers brushing in the exchange. Move in with me. The words came abruptly. Without preamble, I nearly dropped my glass. What? Permanently? Make this your home. He turned to face me fully, setting his wine aside. I'll convert the guest room into a proper studio for your photography. You can still attend your classes, pursue your career. I'm not asking you to give up anything. I'm asking you to gain something. Us together. Every day. My heart hammered against my ribs. Blake, this is happening so fast. We've only known each other 3 weeks and 4 days, he finished. I know exactly how long it's been, Tony, and I know this defies conventional wisdom, but every morning I wake up and you're not here. Something feels fundamentally wrong. Jace asks for you constantly. He paused, vulnerability flickering across his features. I want you here, not as a guest, as someone who belongs. Your world and mine are completely different, I protested weakly. I'm barely keeping my head above water financially, so let me help carry some of that weight. His voice was firm but gentle. This isn't charity or pity. This is me wanting to build something with someone I care about, someone who makes my son laugh, who challenges me to see things differently, who fits into our lives like the missing piece we didn't know we needed. I studied his face in the ambient light, searching for any hint of insincerity. Found none. 1 month. I heard myself say, let me try it for 1 month. If it doesn't work, if I feel like I'm intruding or if things get too complicated, then you can leave. No questions asked. He sealed the agreement immediately, then reached for my hand, bringing it to his lips. But I don't think you will. And so I moved in. Properly this time. My limited possessions looked almost comical spread across Blake's expansive closet space. But he made room, literally and figuratively, treating my worn photography books and thrift store clothes with the same respect as his designer suits. The first week passed smoothly. Blake gave me space to adjust while Jace monopolized my free time with endless games and stories. It felt surreal but right. Then reality intruded in the form of corporate obligations. Come with me tonight, Blake said on a Thursday morning, already dressed in a perfectly tailored charcoal suit. I have a gallery opening. Industry people, potential clients. I want you there. Blake, I don't have anything appropriate to wear. Already handled. He gestured to a garment bag hanging in the closet. But only if you're comfortable. I'm not trying to parade you around. I want you with me. The suit fit perfectly. Blake must have somehow gotten my measurements. As his driver navigated evening traffic toward the gallery, I felt increasingly out of my depth. Photographers snapped pictures as we entered. Whispers followed us through the crowd. I caught fragments of conversation. Who's that with Morrison? New boyfriend? How long has this been happening? Blake kept me close, his hand a steady presence at the small of my back, introducing me to colleagues and associates with quiet pride. But I could feel the scrutiny, the judgment, the speculation. The gossip blogs picked up the story overnight. By Friday afternoon, my face was attached to headlines: Blake Morrison's mystery man, Billionaire's new romance. From student to CEO's partner, the attention made me anxious. This was Blake's world, not mine. I was just someone who'd been in the right place at the right time. Thursday afternoon, I went to Blake's office to pick up Jace from preschool. Since Blake had back-to-back meetings, the receptionist directed me to wait in the lobby while she called for Jace to be brought down. That's when I saw her. She was striking in that effortless way wealthy women often are. Tall, blonde, wearing a dress that probably cost more than my semester's tuition. Her heels clicked purposefully across the marble floor as she approached. You must be Tony. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. I stood, suddenly conscious of my casual jeans and worn jacket. Yes. And you are Janie Morrison, Blake's ex-wife. She paused for emphasis. Jace's mother. My stomach dropped. Blake had mentioned her briefly, but I'd never expected to actually meet her. It's nice to meet you, is it? Her smile vanished, replaced by something calculating and cold. Let me save us both some time with pleasantries. I know exactly who you are and what you think this is. I'm not sure what you mean. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. Blake has a pattern. He fixates on things, new business ventures, expensive acquisitions, people. He pursues them obsessively until he possesses them completely. And then when the novelty fades, he moves on to the next shiny object. I'm not an object, aren't you? Her laugh was bitter. You saved his son. That's admirable. Truly. But what you're experiencing now, that's not love. That's gratitude mixed with obsession. Blake doesn't know the difference. He's convinced himself he needs you, that you're essential to his happiness. But I've seen this before. I lived it. My chest tightened. Your marriage failing doesn't mean... My marriage failed because Blake's intensity is unsustainable. She interrupted. He'll smother you with attention and affection until you can't breathe. He'll make you dependent on him, on this lifestyle, on Lang's special. And then one day you'll wake up and realize you've lost yourself completely. That's when he'll lose interest. Because Blake Morrison doesn't actually want a partner. He wants something to possess. That's not fair, isn't it? She tilted her head, studying me. Ask yourself, honestly, has he given you space to refuse anything? Has he accepted no for an answer? Or does he simply reshape the world until you have no choice but to say yes? Before I could respond, Blake's voice cut through the lobby. Janie. We both turned. He was striding toward us, his expression thunderous but controlled. When he reached us, he immediately positioned himself between Janie and me, protective and possessive in equal measure. "What are you doing here?" His voice was ice. "Visiting my son. Is that suddenly forbidden?" She maintained her composure, but I caught the tremor beneath it. "You have a visitation schedule. This isn't part of it." He reached back, finding my hand and gripping it firmly. "And approaching Tony is completely inappropriate. I was simply introducing myself to your new fixation." The word dripped with contempt. "Enough." Blake's tone left no room for argument. "If you want to see Jace, contact my lawyer to arrange it properly. But ambushing Tony, trying to manipulate him with your bitterness, that ends now." Janie's carefully maintained facade cracked. "You haven't changed at all, have you? Still collecting people? Still convinced you can control everything? Good luck, Tony. You're going to need it when he decides you're not enough anymore." She left, her heels echoing accusingly across the lobby floor. I turned to Blake, doubt creeping through my chest like poison. Is she right? Is this just obsession disguised as something else? His jaw tightened, and for a moment I thought he might deflect. Instead, he pulled me toward a private corner, his hands framing my face with unexpected gentleness. "At first, yes. Gratitude was definitely part of it. You saved Jace. You gave me back the most important person in my world. But Tony," he paused, choosing words carefully, "getting to know you, watching you with my son, seeing your passion for your art, your kindness, your strength, that's when it became real. I'm not attached to what you did. I'm attached to who you are." She said, "You have a pattern." "I do. I commit fully to things that matter to me. Sometimes too fully. But Janie and I were never right for each other. We wanted different things, valued different priorities. With you, everything feels there. Natural, right?" "This is still so intense," I whispered, scared of my own feelings. "I know." His forehead touched mine, the gesture intimate and grounding. "And if it's too much, tell me. I'll back off. But please don't let Janie's pain poison what we're building." I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to believe him so badly. "I need time to process this." "Take all the time you need." He meant it, I could tell. "I'm not going anywhere." But as he pulled me into a careful embrace, Janie's words echoed in my head, planting seeds of doubt I couldn't quite uproot. The following days were strained in ways neither of us acknowledged directly. Blake gave me space, honoring his promise. But I could see the worry in his eyes every time he looked at me. The easy comfort we'd built felt fragile now, shadowed by Janie's warnings. Jace noticed something was off. At dinner one evening, he looked between us with those perceptive gray eyes and asked, "Why is Tony quiet today?" "Just tired, sweetheart," I managed, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach my eyes. But the truth was more complicated. I was confused, overwhelmed by doubts I couldn't shake. Was Blake's attention genuine affection or just an extreme reaction to gratitude? Would this intensity fade once the novelty wore off? I decided I needed distance to think clearly. Thursday evening, I told Blake I was attending my photography class, which was true, though I could have skipped it. I just needed a few hours away from the penthouse, from him, from the weight of decisions I wasn't ready to make. "Text me when class ends," Blake said, unable to hide his concern. "Please." "I will," I promised, and left before the worry in his eyes could change my mind. Class was a welcome distraction, focusing on technical aspects of composition and lighting. For 2 hours, I didn't think about Blake or Janie or complicated relationship dynamics. I was just a student learning his craft. The walk back to the subway should have been uneventful. The streets were relatively empty, typical for a Thursday night in this neighborhood. But halfway to the station, the hairs on the back of my neck stood up. I had the distinct feeling I was being followed. I glanced back. A black sedan was crawling along the curb, matching my pace. My heart rate spiked. I walked faster, reaching for my phone only to realize the battery was nearly dead. Panic began to set in as the car sped up slightly, then pulled directly in front of me, blocking my map. 2 men emerged, both built like professional security, their expressions neutral but intimidating. "Tony Matthews?" One of them confirmed, though it wasn't really a question. I stepped back, looking for an escape route, but the second man had already moved to cut off that option. "Our employer wants a word with you. Don't make this difficult." "I don't know who." "Let go of me." I tried to pull away as one of them gripped my arm. but his hold was iron strong. They weren't hurting me exactly, but they weren't giving me a choice either. They forced me into the back seat. The door locks clicked ominously. My phone was confiscated before I could attempt to send a message. Terror clawed at my throat as the car pulled away from the curb, heading away from familiar streets toward the industrial outskirts of the city. 20 minutes later, we arrived at a warehouse that looked abandoned from the outside. Inside, however, was a furnished office space, minimalist but expensive. A man sat behind a desk, older than Blake, his suit impeccable but his smile predatory. Tony Matthews. He stood, circling the desk to get a better look at me. The man who captured Blake Morrison's attention so completely. Do you have any idea how valuable that makes you? Who are you? I demanded, trying to sound braver than I felt. Derek Langston. I'm what you might call Blake's primary competitor in several markets. He leaned against the desk, studying me like I was a chess piece. And you, my friend, have just become the most useful leverage I could have asked for. My blood ran cold. What do you want? It's simple, really. Blake has been a thorn in my side for years, outbidding me on contracts, stealing my clients, always one step ahead. But every powerful man has a weakness, and you apparently are his. Blake won't negotiate with kidnappers, won't he? Derek's smile widened. You don't know him as well as you think. Blake Morrison doesn't lose things he considers his. And make no mistake, he considers you his. When he realizes you're missing, he'll tear the city apart, and when he's desperate enough, I'll make him an offer you safely returned in exchange for his withdrawal from the Meridian Project. That's insane. That's business. He nodded to his men. Put him in the back room. Make him comfortable but secure. No harm comes to him. We need him intact. Our leverage only works if he's undamaged. They locked me in a windowless room with a cot and a single dim light. Hours crawled by. I had no way to track time, no way to contact anyone. I sat on the cot, alternating between fear and anger, wondering if Blake even knew I was missing yet. Then I heard it shouting, crashing sounds, chaos erupting in the outer office. The door didn't open. It exploded inward. Blake stormed through the wreckage, flanked by a security team I recognized from the penthouse. But he was at the front, leading the charge. His suit jacket discarded somewhere, his shirt sleeves rolled up, his expression absolutely murderous. Tony. Relief and shock hit me simultaneously. Blake. He was across the room before I could finish, hands immediately on me, checking for injuries with barely controlled panic. Did they hurt you? Tell me right now. Did anyone touch you? I'm okay. I'm not hurt. They didn't. He pulled me against him so hard I lost my breath, his arms a vice around my body. He was shaking, or maybe I was. His face buried in my neck, and I felt the dampness of tears against my skin. When you didn't text, when you didn't come home, when I couldn't reach you. His voice broke completely. I thought I'd lost you. I thought, I'm here, I whispered, my own arms finally wrapping around him. I'm okay. You found me. He pulled back just enough to frame my face with both hands, his eyes red-rimmed and wild. If something had happened to you, if they'd hurt you, I would have burned this entire city down. Do you understand that? You've become essential to me, completely essential. And losing you would destroy me. Over his shoulder I saw Derek being restrained by Blake's security team. Blake followed my gaze and his entire demeanor shifted, the vulnerability vanishing behind cold fury. You took him. Blake's voice was lethal quiet as he carefully positioned me behind him. You kidnapped him, terrorized him, used him as a bargaining chip. Blake, let's be reasonable. Reasonable? The word came out as a roar. You committed a felony. You threatened someone under my protection. There is nothing reasonable about what happens to you now. He pulled out his phone, and within minutes I heard sirens approaching. I'm pressing every charge possible. Kidnapping, extortion, unlawful imprisonment. My lawyers will ensure you face maximum penalties for all of. Derek's face went ashen as police entered the warehouse. Blake turned back to me, his hand finding mine and gripping it like a lifeline. Let's go home. The car ride was silent except for my occasional shaky breaths. Blake kept me pulled against his side, his arm around my shoulders, his other hand clasped with mine. Every few minutes, he'd press a kiss to my temple or squeeze my hand as if reassuring himself I was real. At the penthouse, he led me directly to his bedroom. Not the guest room, His bedroom. Stay with me tonight, he said. And it wasn't quite a question. I need to know you're safe. I need to feel you breathing beside me. Please. I nodded, too emotionally exhausted to argue, and too honest with myself to deny that I needed his presence just as much. He gave me clothes to change into. Then we lay down together. He pulled me back against his chest. One arm wrapped securely around my waist, the other hand finding mine and threading our fingers together. This is my fault, he whispered into the darkness. My business dealings, my enemies. They put a target on your back. You didn't kidnap me. Derek did. But he did it because of me. Because you matter to me. His arm tightened. I'll hire personal security for you. Drivers. Whatever it takes to keep you safe. Blake. I can't lose you. His voice was raw, stripped of all his usual control. I won't survive it. And lying there in his arms, feeling the genuine terror still trembling through his body, I realized something crucial. Janie had been wrong about one thing. This wasn't just obsession. This was real, terrifying, overwhelming love. The kind that made a rational man irrational. The kind that inspired both devotion and possession in equal measure. And God help me, I was falling into it too. Morning light filtered through the curtains, and I woke to find myself still wrapped in Blake's arms. He was already awake, watching me with an expression so tender it made my chest ache. Hey, I murmured, suddenly self-conscious. Good morning. His voice was rough from sleep, but his smile was soft. How did you sleep? Better than I expected, considering. I shifted slightly, testing whether he'd let me go. His arms loosened but didn't release. You stayed with me all night. Where else would I be? He said it like it was obvious. Like spending the night holding me was the only logical choice. I told you I need to know you're safe. Before I could respond, something shifted in his expression. Without warning, I leaned up and kissed him. It was my first time initiating contact between us. My choice rather than his pursuit. The kiss started soft, tentative, but when Blake's hand came up to cup my jaw, it deepened into something that stole my breath and scattered my thoughts. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Blake's eyes had darkened with an intensity that sent shivers down my spine. Tony, I kissed him again, this time with more confidence, more certainty. His response was immediate and consuming. One hand sliding into my hair while the other pulled me closer. We tangled together, the kiss growing heated until we were both trembling. Finally, reluctantly, we separated. Blake pressed his forehead to mine, his breathing uneven. I'm in love with you, he said, the words raw and unguarded. Completely, irrevocably in love with you. I know it's fast and probably crazy and definitely intense, but I can't pretend otherwise. You're everything I didn't know I needed. My heart felt too large for my chest. I love you too. The confession seemed to steal his breath. Say that again. I love you, Blake. The words came easier the second time, feeling right in a way few things in my life ever had. I was scared to admit it, scared it was too soon or that Naney was right. But last night, when you came for me, when I saw how terrified you were, I couldn't deny it anymore. I love you. He kissed me again, this time achingly gentle, and I tasted salt. When I pulled back, I saw tears tracking down his face. Stay, he whispered. Not as a trial run. Not temporarily. Stay with me. Build a life with me. Let me love you the way you deserve. Yes, I breathed. Yes, I'll stay. The relief that flooded his features was beautiful to witness. He gathered me close and we stayed like that, holding each other as the morning sun painted gold across the bedroom walls. A knock at the door broke the moment. Daddy? Tony? Jace's voice carried through the wood, followed by small fists knocking. Blake and I exchanged glances, then quickly separated to a more appropriate distance just as the door opened. Jace burst in, his nanny Maria hovering apologetically behind him. I'm so sorry, Mr. Morrison. He was very insistent. It's fine, Maria. Blake was already reaching for Jace, pulling his son into his arms. What's wrong, buddy? Is Tony okay? Jace's gray eyes, so like his father's, were wide with concern. You said bad people took him away. I'm perfectly fine, I assured him quickly, moving to sit beside them on the bed. Your dad made sure of that. He's my hero. Jace studied me carefully, then seemed satisfied. He launched himself at me in a hug that nearly knocked me over. I'm glad you're okay. I was scared. My throat tightened. I'm sorry I scared you. It's okay. He pulled back, then looked between Blake and me with a wisdom beyond his years. Are you going to stay forever now? For real? Blake and I exchanged another look, this one full of promise and possibility. Yeah, buddy, I said softly. For real. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of change. I officially moved in, transforming the guest room into a functional photography studio. Blake's connections opened doors for my work gallery showings, freelance opportunities with legitimate publications, commissions from clients who appreciated my style. I'm not buying your success, Blake insisted when I worried about nepotism. I'm simply introducing your talent to people who can appreciate it. What happens after that is entirely on your merit. And he was right, my work stood on its own. The exhibitions drew crowds, the commissions kept coming, and slowly I built a reputation independent of being Blake Morrison's partner. Not that the media ever let me forget that part. We were photographed constantly at gallery openings, charity events, simple dinners out. Headlines tracked our relationship with obsessive detail. But eventually the novelty faded, and we became just another established couple in the city's social landscape. Janie made one final attempt to interfere. She appeared at Blake's office one afternoon when I happened to be visiting. Blake, we need to talk about— No, we don't. His voice was firm but not unkind. My future is with Tony. That's not going to change. You have access to Jace according to our custody agreement. But my personal life is no longer your concern. She looked at me then, and I saw something in her expression shift, resignation perhaps. Or acceptance. Fine, she said quietly. Just be good to him. Always. Blake promised. She left without another word, and I felt a chapter finally closing. Months blurred into a year. My photography career flourished. Blake and I found our rhythm, professional respect, personal passion, and partnership in raising Jace. We were building something real and sustainable, now standing in our bedroom, no longer his bedroom but ours. I'm getting ready for Jace's 6th birthday party. Blake comes up behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist and resting his chin on my shoulder. Are you ready for today? He asks, and there's something mischievous in his tone. It's just a birthday party. Why wouldn't I be ready? Because Jace has a question for you. Before I can ask what he means, Blake is leading me downstairs where decorations transform the living room into a child's paradise. Jace spots us immediately and comes running. Tony! Tony! I catch him in a hug, laughing. Happy birthday, sweetheart. Thank you. He pulls back, suddenly shy. Can I ask you something important? Of course. Anything. He glances at Blake, who nods encouragingly. Then Jace looks back at me with those serious gray eyes. Will you be my papa? Like officially? Daddy says you're already family, but I want it to be real. I want to call you Papa for real. The world stops. I look at Blake, who's watching me with barely contained emotion. We talked about it, Blake explains softly. About how much you mean to both of us. About making our family official. Jace decided on his own that he wants this. But only if you're comfortable with it. I look down at this beautiful child who's wrapped himself around my heart as completely as his father has. Then at Blake, the man I love more than I knew was possible. Yes, I whisper, my voice thick with emotion. Yes, Jace. I would be honored to be your papa. Jace's squeal of joy is deafening. He throws himself at me and Blake wraps around us both, creating a circle of 3 that feels complete in a way I never imagined possible. I love you both so much, Blake murmurs. We love you too. I respond and mean it with every fiber of my being. As Jace runs off to tell his friends the news, Blake takes my hand and simply holds it, his thumb tracing familiar patterns across my knuckles. 1 year ago, I jumped into a river to save a drowning child. I thought that would be the most significant moment of my life. One heroic act, then back to normal. Instead, it was the beginning of everything. My real life, my real family, my real home, and I wouldn't change a single moment of it.